Hello and welcome to all of our delegates that have come online to join us today to share with us a little preview in how we are teaching brain fitness to primary school children. My name is Maria and I'm here with a school principal from Diamond Creek East Primary School, and this is Robert. And what we're going to do this afternoon is that we're going to talk to you a little bit about our journey that we've had and a little bit about ourselves so that you know and what we have managed to partner and work with our kids. But before we start, can we please ask all delegates to, on their on-air program, to ask your questions and go into your Q&A section on the right-hand side of the screen. And I've got it up here, and also a discussion forum. Use that. Please don't use your Zoom platform to ask questions. Please ask your questions and engaging in the chat on the online on-air platform. So welcome. We've got about 40 minutes together, so let's begin. My name is Maria Roberto and I am the psychologist and neuropsychotherapist working in education and in organisations to bring the concept of mental fitness to individuals and communities. With over 20 years experience in the industry and with rates of mental ill health impacting and interfering with really good quality lives, my work is framed on activating wellbeing literacy based on a strengths-based program, on a paradigm. This afternoon, you will be given a small insight to what has been made possible in partnership with strong educational leadership, which is going to become really important in our story, that understands the critical importance of leading and teaching wellbeing. Over to you, Robert.
Hi, my name's Robert Stalis and I'm the principal at Diamond Creek East Primary School. And I've been in the chair now for 25 years. And so I've been able to see lots of change and lots of growth. Staff and student wellbeing have always been a priority of mine and a priority of Diamond Creek East Primary School. And over the many years, we've utilised many different programs. For instance, You Can Do It and many other programs that are quite similar, and we've found them most wanting. So over the last 5 years, we've embraced a wellbeing perspective that is supported by neuroscience. So we don't offer a program as such. We more offer an environment that is based on the notion of creating bees, which means believe in positive expectations and emotions. This guides our wellbeing strategies, our planning, and our school culture.
So research tells us that when we teach a concept early, it's a primary prevention approach and therefore becomes resource building rather than waiting for developing mental symptoms to appear and then run recovery programs. This evidence is researched by some of the professor giants in psychology and education and neuroscience. People like Helen Immordino-Yang, Carol Dweck, Con Stow, Swinburne University, Stephen Porges, Daniel Siegel, Barbara Fredrickson, Richard Catalano, Richard Davidson. These are just to name a few. So what we've done is that we've collected all of this amazing research and we've brought it into an application and approach. And apart from building positive youth assets to buffer mental ill health, this also demonstrates how mental fitness can actually build learning capacity and also increase performance.
I was first introduced to the neuroscience approach to wellbeing about 5 years ago at a principal's conference. As a principal that affirmed what I've been blindly doing for many years. I knew I was doing good things, but I didn't know why. But now I know why it is good for my students and teachers in terms of their physiological and psychological responses. The neuroscience is hard to dispute and provides a common sense and practical approach for staff, students and parents. Getting the staff on board to support this approach was relatively simple, as in all the professional development provided practical information relevant to their roles as teachers, but more importantly, provided valuable strategies for their own personal lives. It was definitely a win-win scenario. Following this, we thought that the information provided through neuroscience to guide mental and brain fitness was too vital not to share with our students. So this saw the birth of our biannual 2-day brain conference for our grade 5 and 6 students. This conference provides a fully immersive 2-day experience followed by an evening parent workshop.
It's common to understand mental fitness, which is simply the strategies and tools to regularly increase fitness capacity of the mind through a behavioural lens. So things like practicing mindfulness, sleep, hygiene, regular exercise, clean eating, an optimistic mindset, and engaging in random acts of kindness are just some examples. We know that these strategies have been proven clinically to ameliorate symptoms of developing mental health problems. Our greatest interfering variable, however, is motivation and adherence to these strategies. Getting students and adults to actually hold the strategies and stay with them long enough for them to have an impact. So my interest in neuroscience and the research behind its application shows that when we teach brain fitness, which is teaching the functions of the brain, teaching parts of the brain and what they do, and demonstrating how neurological processes actually describe internal physiological responses, such as anxiety or depression, and how they impact behavioural responses like fear or anxiety, the motivation to adherence is significantly raised. So there's a very personal investment in knowing the function of your own brain.
The children at Diamond Creek East Primary School could not get enough information about their brain function. Their thirst for knowledge was unquenchable. As principal, I've never seen children ask so many questions. They filled reams and reams of paper with questions that were driven by their own anxieties and their own experiences. So through our work with Maria, almost by accident, we started telling stories to our students about how to create bees and what to do to ward off ants. And this became a very powerful narrative because, as we know, storytelling is the most basic and recognised form of passing on, sharing, teaching and learning in all cultures. Storytelling is how a culture shares what is of value from one generation to the next. We started off by telling these stories at our first brain conference. In our early conversations, we thought that this information may be too complex for 10 to 12-year-olds. And we certainly underestimated our students. You know, we thought, would they be able to engage for 2 days with all this information? And they came through with flying colours. So after many months of brainstorming, we developed a skeleton plan of what our conference might look like. We broke the school days up into 5 sessions over 2 days. And we began developing an understanding of how the brain works and grows, the impacts of good and bad chemicals in our brains, and explored the 3 systems of the brain and how stress can affect the way that we function. What we also discussed with the children is, again, the concept of bees, and at Diamond Creek East, bees make honey, and honey are the good chemicals that are produced by your brain. So over those 2 days, we discussed the following: the language of optimism, BDNF and my brain, the triune brain, the human function curve, and emotional regulation.
So the Brain Fitness Conference is an immersion design. Very important for us to know this. It is not like the normal workshops that we would do with staff or even with students. The immersion design means that they came into the conference and they were totally immersed visually. They were totally immersed with their equipment. The senior year levels took 2 entire days to become totally imbued in the language, the characters, the stories, the theories, the activities, the application of brain function. We're actually going to show you some images in a moment that we have. And they were treated like prestigious conference delegates. Nothing was spared. Lanyards, caps, they had notebooks, they had pens, they had to come in and register. It was absolutely the dinky-die way of running an authentic conference. And this absolutely set the tone for their level of learning attention, which became really important because so much value was placed on what was being presented to them. And it increased the learning expectations. They were exposed and taught scientific words, labels, neurological processes. It was expected that they retained this level of scientific language, and they absolutely did.
Throughout the 2 days, we had a live scrolling questions board for the students to submit their questions to. Luckily, we did this as the volume of questions we received could not be answered in 2 days. Again, the thirst for knowledge was extraordinary. And so we've run 2 of these now, and they've been exactly the same. The thirst for knowledge, what the children want to know about their own anxieties and how their brain works is actually overwhelming. One more extraordinary thing was the depth of thinking and understanding that was demonstrated through their questions. The thirst for knowledge and relative ease with which how the students began to take on the new information quickly answered our question we were grappling with during planning. Grade 5-6 is not too young to conduct this conference and does set them well up for when they head off to high school. And our children remained completely engaged for 2 days. And in fact, when their parents came on to the parent session, they were just as excited to be able to share that information with their parents. So as a school, we get a lot of positive feedback about the whole experience, and the concept is well regarded by parents, staff and students. At our most recent conference, we had a strong representation from school council who walked away in awe of all our students and the whole experience. The next steps for us include deepening the understandings for our younger students and continue to work to form a preventative rather than reactive model. It's the old adage, prevention is better than cure.
The characters that were developed to reflect the form and function of brain processes developed personalities and patterns of behaviours which could be easily replicated by young students. So we're going to now just share some of the characters with you so that you could see how the narratives developed. During the 2 days, we broke the content up into 5 sessions, as Robert had explained. Every student on their table received a mat, a placemat. And this is an example of one. So that's the language of optimism. That was the first topic. And then, and what they were able to do is that because they had the mats on their conference tables, then they simply wrote on all of their placemats, which was a really beautiful way to be able to engage the images that they had in front of them, and also to write up the information that was being presented. The next one, we looked at BDNF. And as you can see from that, BDNF, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain and is absolutely critical to brain functioning, they took that all on board. When you ask them what's BDNF, they will tell you it's brain-derived neurotropic factor. And they know exactly where it's made and where it comes from. And then we went in and talked about the triune brain. So we talked about different areas of the brain. We talked about prefrontal cortex, which was the thinking. We talked about the limbic system, which was the reactive brain and where emotion and learning sits. And we really unpacked that. And then what we did is that we talked about the human function curve. And we talked about levels of stress and how they impact, and that not all stress is bad stress. And there's really good stress. And when the good stress, we harness that, our performance can actually hit really good heights, and we engage really well, and we remember and learn. And then the last section is that we talked about emotional regulation, which is really the key area that most schools are looking at the moment in terms of really teaching their students so that they are able to regulate well in order to engage with the learning. But the really important thing is that we want to share are the characters that were developed. So we want to start off with we want to start off with Elma.
Elma the ant.
So do you want to talk about Elma the ant?
Well, we talked to the children about what an automatic negative thought, acronym ANT, and how these are the first things that pop into your head when you're not feeling good, or when you're under a bit of pressure, or when you think you're in danger. So we say to children that it's okay to have a couple of ants, but when you're having lots of ants, that's not healthy, and we need to create these. And we've also have our bee friend here, Bradley, who teaches our students to believe in positive expectations and emotions. But this all happens through our guide, who is over there somewhere, Orlando, the optimistic octopus. So,
but he's fantastic. Why is he so great?
He's so great because he's always positive, and he's
Absolutely.
always optimistic, and he's always wanting to help. And in our first book, a lot of the work that we did with the students was around the hippocampus, and in Greek, the hippocampus means seahorse. So we talked about how can we make honey, good chemicals for your brain. So in other words, the series of books, Honey for Your Seahorse, how do we do that? And Orlando's job is to teach all our characters how to make the good chemicals in your brain, how to reset your brain, how to keep your brain fit. And so he's our brain fitness guide, and he introduces our students to a number of different characters, which coincidentally also marry up with 10 different strategies as well too. Maria.
So we've got a whole lot of different characters, and I'm just going to mention a couple of others because they're really important. Meredith, the maladjusted meerkat, really represents anxiety in the brain and how anxiety develops, and then the effects that it has internally. How when Meredith is really active, there's nausea, there's a tight chest, there's grinding jaw, there's jittering, there's heart palpitations. So every character really is beautifully, is a beautiful representation of brain function. But I guess we're sort of wondering whether there are any questions, but we just want to end off by saying there are a whole set of books that we have published, and we are so completely thrilled because every book has a preamble for educators and for parents around the neuroscience for that book. So you will actually get the insight, the neuroscience, the language around what it is that the book is referring to. And then there is a narrative about what happens to the characters, and the characters are very much representative of brain responses. At the back of each book, Robert?
At the back of each book, we've got a teacher's guide, and we've kept that very simple. Only 3 activities to support what's being discussed in the book, so that, again, teachers don't find it overwhelming. We want these books to be used. And again, it's not a program, it's a way of thinking and a way of doing things. So the 3 activities support that, and they support whatever strategy is being taught in the book at that point in time.
I'm just having a look to see whether we've got any questions. No, not that I can see. Okay. So I guess one of the things that we are also excited about is that there are a number of different characters that have been introduced to our students. There's Terry the traffic light, and he resembles the 3 parts of the brain. A lot of you will look at this and you will think about the zones of regulation program that a lot of schools are running. And the zones of regulation program talk about teaching children how to self-regulate. Terry does this through storytelling and through the narrative, but he does this beautifully through explaining to children what parts of their brain go red, what parts of their brain go orange, and what parts of their brain go green when they are dysregulated, and what parts are activated when they downregulate and when they begin to decrease their levels of stress.
There are 10 books in total, and if you want to find out more about the books, if you go to Maria's website,
and we will put that up. We'll give that to Carly, and Carly can put that up, and you can come in.
All the titles are there, but if the books are designed to be read in order, because each story builds on the previous story. And so just as a bit of an example, that first one, that's where our two main characters, Billy and JB, meet Orlando, the octopus, down at the beach, and they ask him questions about well-being, and he is then takes on the responsibility of being their well-being guide. And then in the next book, we're introduced to the concept of bees and ants, making honey, the good chemicals for your brain, what an ant is, and what bees can do for you, how you can make bees to help you make more honey.
And I think one of the things that we stress to students is that we actually talk about the neurotransmitters. So Bradley the bee, he is the one who makes the neurotransmitters. So things like serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, BDNF. So the reason why Bradley becomes so important and he's so pivotal in the narrative is because he needs to keep producing that honey. And the honey is so representative of those neurotransmitters. But the next book is about sleep hygiene, and sleep hygiene is a huge thing for young people.
That's right. So sleep hygiene, and tells all the children why it's important and why to have a routine before you go to sleep each night. And then there's obviously a new character in there, being Sally the sleepy sloth, and the children find that quite an easy read and very relatable to what they need to do at home each night before they go to bed. Let me just say, as principal of the school, that the work that we've done over the last 5 years has really transformed the school. As it's not a program, in fact, it's quite easy, but you need to get everyone on board and speak the language. And the great thing about this is during this current pandemic, we've been able to harness what we've taught the children in terms of well-being, because earlier on this year, before all this happened, we were talking to children about, what do you do when things don't go your way? And we said, we all need a plan B. And again, at Diamond Creek East, B, believe in positive expectations and emotions. So we talk to children about plan B, then all of a sudden, yes, we have a pandemic, and we were able to put their plan Bs into action at home and through what we were sending home, because the language, not only common to the staff and the students, but very common to the parents, because we've been now talking about this for 5 years, and it's very, very well received, and it's a very unifying thing at our school.
And in fact, over this time, especially during COVID, when we refer back to their learning, and their learning started off with an ant, and the ant being the automatic negative thought, which are the worries that the young people keep, and parents and adults, it's all of us. Neuroscience doesn't discriminate between age. But ants is really representative of those automatic negative thoughts, those negative thoughts that are influential, that they are intrusive, and that they stay and they ruminate. And so that was what the ant stands for. And with the B, it is believing in emotion and expectation, but positive. And so these are some of the concepts that started the kids on this journey, but then they kept asking questions and they kept wanting to know more and more. And you could see they were desperate for the story. And then one of the other books that we then focused on was the Hippocampus. And the hippocampus being the section of the brain that sits in the limbic, sits right in the middle of the brain. that really is responsible for learning, learning attention, learning memory, learning recall, and it's where emotion sits as well. And we're just having a look to see if there are any more.
Yeah, the target group for these books, look, ideally they're geared for grade 3 and 4, but we've used the books with preps onwards. They've been well received by parents as well too, because the stories are very relatable. They all make sense, and yeah, we've had people in their 70s and 80s read them and think they're very good. But generally middle school, in the primary area. But again, like I said, some of our teachers choose to read them in prep to 2 and just take some of the main concepts out, because we do start discussing bees and ants from the very beginning where children come to school. And again, bees believe in positive expectations, B, expectations and emotions, E, and S for obviously plural, and ants automatic negative thoughts. And again, very simple but very powerful, and it works brilliantly with our children at this school, and I'm sure it'll be quite transferable to any other school as well too.
So one of the things that we also were curious about was what age group, what are we targeting? And with the Brain Fitness Conference, we were targeting the grade 5s and 6s. But with the books, with the picture books, we found that about grade 2, wasn't it? About grade 2, 3, 4. And what we are doing is that we are really using a primary preventative approach. When we teach the characters at an early age, at the age where they understand and connect with the characters, even before they understand the content, once they get to grade 5 and 6, they are so familiar with the characters that they are so ready for that neuroscience to connect with the narrative and the story. So I guess it becomes a whole school program that on the one hand, the junior kids are given the characters to work with, and then as a senior level, they then go in and do the science.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, are there any other questions? How are we going? What else can we tell them? Yeah.
Well, we'll start off with this. Like, this is very important to our school now. In fact, we start every school week with an assembly, and at our assembly every week, and we did a lot of mindfulness activities over the last 4 or 5 years every Monday, where we have 450 students participate in one activity. We have over 100 parents. And when we first did it, everyone thought it was a bit corny, but after a while, everyone got used to it, and actually everyone thinks it's a great idea. And now, over the last 12 months, we've changed it to a honeypot. So a honeypot arrives at assembly each week from a class, and in that honeypot, there's little messages of gratitude. And again, we're reinforcing the bee, the honey part about gratitude. And as we all know, gratitude builds resilience. And so we encourage our children to be grateful in many different ways. The other good thing is about, last year we invited some of our former students back to school in year 8 and year 9, and they still remember everything that we taught them about bees and ants, and in fact, some of them still use it. And that was very reassuring to us, knowing that what we were doing was a good thing and we're providing some lifelong skills.
Yeah, so sometimes I'm asked, are these concepts also, can they also be targeted in the secondary sector? And we've actually had a go at a couple of other schools in targeting year 7s and year 8s. And we were really surprised how relevant it remains in terms of the characters and even in terms of the books. The book's not as a picture book, but the fact that there are narratives that the Year 7s and 8s can then explore and take on and build their own stories. So I guess one of the messages that we sort of want to leave you with is that neuroscience becomes the leverage. It becomes the point where children sit back and they go, oh, you're telling me about my brain. I'm learning about how my brain in my head works. And it's an area that really is not addressed during their development. It's not, you know, we talk about positive behaviours and we talk about expectations and we talk about emotions, but we certainly don't talk about the function of the brain and how particular elements impact on the brain. So, for example, you know, we spent a little bit of time talking about Casey, the kangaroo, and Casey the kangaroo, if she's, do we have Casey the kangaroo? No, that's okay, we don't. But Casey the kangaroo talks about clean eating. And then we spend a little bit of time with the students talking about how food, what food we choose to eat has a big impact on how digestion then runs. But one of the big things about understanding clean eating is that serotonin, which is a B, yeah, serotonin, one of the neurotransmitters, is actually created in the gut. So when they learned that, they said, well, do some foods prevent serotonin from being produced well? And the answer is yes. So fast foods, high fatty foods, and then suddenly they were saying, oh, well then maybe I shouldn't eat so many hot chips. And we're going, yeah, right. So they had a beautiful opportunity to be able to then connect with each other, have discussions. There were lots of activities, but some really basic neuroscience almost flourished for these students in terms of how they then translated that into their either learning or everyday life. But what was really magical was when they went home and they were telling their parents. And they started, they would go home after day one, and the feedback that Robert got, I'll hand it over to you in a moment, but the feedback that they got was that the kids came home and couldn't stop talking. That's right. Yeah, so what were some of the stories?
Well, some of the stories that the kids were coming home about were just obviously things that they related to their own anxieties at home with their parents. So after our parent session, you know, we had parents who, I suppose, tried to very, how would you say, tried to very carefully edge their way up to Maria without being seen by other parents to say, look, I'm having this problem at home. And the same as what the kids were doing during the day, because everyone wants to know why they think in a particular way.
Correct.
One of the questions that's come up a couple of times here is how do the books link with the neuroscience? So I can quickly read out some of these links here. If you are really interested in the books, apart from going to Maria's website, if you want to try before you buy, or even if you don't want to buy, if you just want to know what they're about, if you go to the Diamond Creek East Primary School website, there's a little section there called Content, and we've actually, I think there's about 7 of the books are there in audio form, and they flick through, and one of our teachers reads the stories out for you. So if you would like to explore them that way, that's fine. But basically, with the 10 books, I'll just go through a few of them for you. But the first one is called Honey for Your Seahorse, which is about believing in positive expectations and emotions. The second one is about, it's called The Ants, the Real Story of the Ants and Bees. It's about how you make different chemicals for your brain to feed your brain. The next one is about called The Power of Z. It's the importance of sleep and it's linked to hippocampus strength. The next one, super honey, what you need to do to create BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Very, very important. The next one is called How Are You Feeling? And it's about labeling your emotions. Then there's one called The Signals, which is the triune brain. Anxious moments, which is about resetting your vagal tone. And it goes on. Again, there's probably a graphic of that in Maria's website.
So we're probably going to wrap up, I would say, soon. We've got a couple of minutes. So we'd like to thank you for joining us today. And we hope that you have questions and that you would like to contact us, because we can talk relentlessly about what has happened, about student responses, and we haven't really spoken about staff wellbeing, but the staff are so engaged and so immersed in the neuroscience, and they are becoming more and more comfortable in being able to answer questions on their own. So please join us after our video in visiting the exhibition marketplace that On Air has for you, where there are 30 suppliers all ready to share their material and connect with you via video call or via chat. You can request a meeting or a quote, view their product range, and set up your educational needs for 2020, 2021 and beyond.
Thanks, Chanel. It sounds like an infomercial, but well done. Very good.
Thank you very much for giving us your time and for allowing us to really share what we so passionately believe has been completely transformative. Yep. So thanks, Robert.
And if you're in Victoria and you want to come and have a look,
yeah, absolutely,
when you can, just give us a call.
Yeah, or give us a call anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
All good. Thank you.
Thank you.